Part 1. The Unlikely. Beginning Maya had never been so far from home in her entire life. Standing at the small airport in Kenya, with dust swirling around her feet and the African sun beating down on her shoulders, she wondered what she had gotten herself into. Just 3 months ago, she was sitting in her marine biology class in California, dreaming about coral reefs and ocean currents. Now here she was, about to spend her summer working at a wildlife reserve in the middle of nowhere. The plane ride had been long and bumpy. Maya kept checking her phone, even though she knew there was no signal out here. Back home, her friends were probably at the beach right now, enjoying their normal summer vacation. Meanwhile, she was standing in the heat, waiting for someone she had never met to pick her up. A cloud of dust appeared on the horizon, growing bigger as it got closer. Soon, Maya could see it was an old Jeep, painted green and covered in scratches from driving through thick bushes. The vehicle stopped right in front of her, and out stepped a woman who looked nothing like what Maya had expected. Dr. Zara was tall and confident, with kind eyes and a warm smile. She wore simple khaki clothes and sturdy boots. But there was something about the way she carried herself that made everyone around her stand a little straighter. Even the airport workers seemed to treat her with special respect, nodding politely as she walked past. "You must be Maya," Dr. Zara said, extending her hand. "Welcome to Kenya. I hope you're ready for an adventure." Maya shook her hand, trying to hide how nervous she felt. "Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, though I have to admit, I'm a little scared, too." Dr. Zara laughed, a rich sound that immediately made Maya feel more at ease. "Fear is normal. It means you're about to learn something new. Come on, let's get you to the reserve. We have a lot to show you." The drive to the reserve took 2 hours on roads that were more like dirt paths. Maya held on tight as the Jeep bounced and swayed through the countryside. She had never seen landscape like this before. Rolling hills stretched as far as the eye could see, dotted with acacia trees and termite mounds. Occasionally, they would pass a group of zebras grazing peacefully, or a family of baboons playing by the roadside. "This is all part of our conservation area," Dr. Zara explained, pointing out the window. 50,000 acres of protected land. My family has lived here for generations, but we decided to turn it into a wildlife preserve instead of selling it to developers. Maya was impressed. "That must have been a difficult decision." "Not really," Dr. Zara replied. "This land is part of who we are. Protecting it isn't just about the animals. It's about preserving our heritage and finding a way for our community to thrive alongside nature." As they drove deeper into the reserve, Maya began to understand what Dr. Zara meant. This wasn't just a wildlife park. It was a living, breathing community where people and animals coexisted in harmony. She saw traditional huts next to modern, research stations, and local rangers working alongside international scientists. When they finally arrived at the main camp, Maya was amazed by what she found. The buildings were simple but well-designed, built from local materials and powered by solar panels. There was a research center, a medical clinic, a school, and housing for researchers and community members. Everything seemed to blend naturally into the landscape. "This is your home for the next few months," Dr. Zara said, leading Maya to a small but comfortable cabin. "I know it's not what you're used to, but I think you'll find it has everything you need." Maya looked around the cabin. It was basic but clean, with a bed, a desk, and a small bathroom. Most importantly, it had mosquito netting and a fan. 2 things she had been told were essential for surviving in this climate. That first night, Maya lay in bed listening to sounds she had never heard before. Lions roaring in the distance, hyenas calling to each other, and the constant chirping of insects. Back home, the only sounds she heard at night were cars driving by and the occasional airplane. Here, she was surrounded by the symphony of wild Africa. The next morning, Dr. Zara took Maya on a tour of the reserve. They visited the veterinary clinic where injured animals were treated and nursed back to health. They stopped by the school, where local children learned about conservation alongside traditional subjects. They even watched researchers tag and track elephants using the latest technology. "I have to admit," Maya said as they sat down for lunch, "this is nothing like what I expected. I thought I would just be collecting water samples and writing reports." Dr. Zara smiled. Conservation isn't just about science. It's about people, culture, economics, and politics. If you really want to protect wildlife, you have to understand all of these things. Over the following days, Maya threw herself into learning everything she could. She struggled with the heat and the altitude. She made mistakes with her research equipment. She couldn't understand half of what the local rangers were saying, even when they spoke English. But slowly, she began to find her place. Dr. Zara was patient with her, always ready to explain things or offer encouragement when Maya felt overwhelmed. She introduced Maya to community elders who shared stories about the land and its history. She arranged for Maya to shadow experienced researchers who taught her practical skills she had never learned in university. Most importantly, Dr. Zara helped Maya understand that being a good conservationist meant being humble. "You're not here to save Africa," she explained one evening as they watched the sunset from a hilltop. "You're here to learn from people who have been protecting this land for centuries and maybe contribute something useful along the way." Maya nodded finally, beginning to understand. This wasn't just a summer internship. It was the beginning of a journey that would change her life forever. She had come to Kenya thinking she knew what she wanted to do with her career. Now she realized she had so much more to learn about the world, about conservation, and about herself. As she fell asleep that night to the sounds of the African wilderness, Maya smiled. For the first time since arriving, she wasn't thinking about home or wishing she was somewhere else. She was exactly where she needed to be, learning from an remarkable woman who was showing her a completely different way of looking at the world. Little did she know that this was just the beginning of a story that would transform not only her understanding of conservation, but her entire life. Part 2. Finding Her Place. 2 months had passed since Maya first arrived at the reserve, and she could hardly believe how much her life had changed. The girl who once got sunburned just walking to her car was now spending entire days under the African sun, tracking animals and collecting water samples from remote streams. Her hands were calloused from fieldwork, her arms were tanned, and she could finally sleep through the night sounds of the wilderness. What surprised her most was how natural everything felt now. When she first arrived, even simple tasks like starting the generator or purifying water seemed impossibly complicated. Now she moved through her daily routine with confidence, checking equipment, organizing data, and helping newer volunteers who arrived looking just as lost as she once had. The real change came when Maya started working directly with Dr. Zara on a project to improve water quality in the reserve's rivers and lakes. Maya's background in marine biology, which had seemed useless in this landlocked environment, suddenly became incredibly valuable. She could see problems that others missed and suggest solutions that nobody else had considered. "Look at this," Maya said one morning, showing Dr. Zara her latest water analysis results. "The oxygen levels in the eastern lake are dropping. I think it's because of runoff from the new farming area upstream." Dr. Zara studied the data carefully. "You're right. What do you think we should do about it?" Maya had been thinking about this problem for days. "We could work with the farmers to create buffer strips along the riverbank. Plant native grasses that would filter the runoff before it reaches the water. It would actually help their crops too by preventing soil erosion." "That's brilliant," Dr. Zara said, and Maya felt a warm glow of pride. "Can you put together a proposal for the community meeting next week?" The community meeting was Maya's first real test. She had attended several meetings before, but always as an observer. This time she would be presenting her own ideas to a room full of people who had been living on this land their entire lives. The night before the meeting, she barely slept, practicing her presentation over and over. When the day arrived, Maya's hands were shaking as she stood up to speak. But as she began explaining her research and her ideas for protecting the water supply, something amazing happened. The room grew quiet, not with boredom or skepticism, but with genuine interest. People asked thoughtful questions and offered their own observations about changes they had noticed in the water quality. An elderly farmer named Kofi raised his hand. "This young lady is right about the runoff problem. I've been farming here for 40 years, and I've seen how the rains wash away more soil each season. Her idea about the grass strips makes sense." After the meeting, several community members came up to thank Maya for her work. One woman invited her to dinner with her family. A group of teenagers asked if she could teach them how to test water quality. For the first time since arriving in Kenya, Maya felt like she truly belonged. The success of the water project led to more opportunities. Dr. Zara began including Maya in high-level planning meetings with government officials and conservation organizations. When international donors visited the reserve, Maya was asked to present her research and explain how the community-based conservation model was working. During one particularly memorable week, a delegation from the European Union came to evaluate the reserve for additional funding. Maya was nervous about presenting to such important visitors, but Dr. Zara encouraged her to speak from the heart about what she had learned. "When I first came here," Maya told the delegation, "I thought conservation was just about protecting animals. But I've learned that you can't separate wildlife conservation from human communities. The people who live here aren't obstacles to conservation. They're partners in it. The traditional knowledge they've developed over generations is just as valuable as any scientific research." The delegation was impressed, and the reserve received the largest grant in its history. But what meant more to Maya than any funding was the way Dr. Zara smiled at her after the presentation, with obvious pride and respect. As the months passed, Maya and Dr. Zara began spending more time together outside of work. They would sit by the campfire in the evenings, talking about their hopes for the future of conservation. Dr. Zara shared stories about growing up in the community, about the challenges of balancing traditional ways with modern needs, and about her dreams of creating a model that other communities could follow. Maya found herself opening up too, talking about her childhood in California, her family's expectations, and her growing realization that she wanted to dedicate her life to this work. She had originally planned to return to university after her internship, but now that seemed impossible. How could she go back to studying theory in a classroom when she was doing meaningful work in the real world? One evening, as they watched a herd of elephants drinking at the watering hole, Dr. Zara turned to Maya with a serious expression. "I've been thinking about offering you a permanent position here as our Director of Water Resources. It would mean staying in Kenya, working with the community long-term, and taking on significant responsibilities. Are you interested?" Maya's heart raced. This was the offer she had been hoping for, but hadn't dared to expect. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Absolutely yes." Dr. Zara smiled. "Good, because I can't imagine doing this work without you anymore. You've become an essential part of our team, and more than that, you've become family." The word family sent a warm feeling through Maya's chest. She had found more than a job or even a career in Kenya. She had found a purpose, a community, and people who valued her contributions. Most importantly, she had found someone who believed in her potential and challenged her to be better every day. As they walked back to camp that night, Maya looked up at the star-filled African sky and realized that the scared, uncertain girl who had arrived months ago was gone forever. In her place was someone confident, capable, and ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. She was no longer a visitor in this place. She was home. Part 3. The Bond Deepens. 6 months had passed since Maya accepted the permanent position at the reserve, and her life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. She woke each morning to the sound of birds singing and the distant calls of animals beginning their day. Her work had expanded beyond water quality to include training local youth in conservation techniques and helping other reserves implement similar programs. But something had changed between her and Dr. Zara. What started as professional respect and friendship had grown into something deeper, something that made Maya's heart skip a beat whenever Zara walked into a room. She found herself paying attention to small details, the way Zara's eyes lit up when discussing a successful project, how she always made sure everyone felt included in meetings, the gentle way she handled injured animals. Maya tried to convince herself these feelings were just admiration for a mentor. After all, Zara was an accomplished leader who had dedicated her life to protecting both wildlife and her community. It was natural to feel inspired by someone like that. But deep down, Maya knew this was something more. The realization hit her, fully during a 3-day expedition to track a pride of lions that had been spotted near the northern boundary. Maya and Zara were working together to set up camera traps, hoping to understand the lions' movement patterns and ensure they weren't threatening nearby villages. On the second night of the expedition, they made camp under a massive baobab tree. The sky was incredibly clear, with more stars visible than Maya had ever seen in her life. As they sat by their small campfire, sharing a simple meal of bread and cheese, Zara began telling stories about her childhood. "I used to climb this exact tree when I was little," Zara said, pointing up at the ancient baobab. "My grandmother would tell me stories about how the baobab was planted upside down by the gods, which is why its branches look like roots reaching toward the sky." Maya smiled. "Did you always know you wanted to be a conservationist?" "Not exactly," Zara replied. "When I was young, I wanted to be a doctor in the city. I thought that was the only way to help people. It took me years to understand that protecting our land and our traditions was just as important as any medicine." They talked until late into the night, sharing stories about their families, their dreams, and their fears. Maya learned that Zara sometimes felt overwhelmed by the responsibility of leading the community and managing the reserve. Zara discovered that Maya still missed her family in California, but had never felt more at home than she did here in Kenya. Sci-Fi. The fire died down to glowing embers. They moved closer together to stay warm. Maya became acutely aware of Zara sitting just inches away from her. When Zara turned to say goodnight, their faces were so close that Maya could see the reflection of stars in her eyes. "Maya," Zara said softly, "I need to tell you something." Before she could finish her sentence, Maya leaned forward and kissed her. It was gentle and tentative at first, then deeper as Zara kissed her back. When they finally separated, both women were breathing hard. "I've been wanting to do that for months," Maya whispered. "So have I," Zara replied, reaching up to touch Maya's face. "But I wasn't sure if you felt the same way." They stayed awake until dawn, talking about their feelings and what this might mean for their relationship. Both women were careful and thoughtful, understanding that their personal connection was intertwined with their professional responsibilities and Zara's role in the community. The next few weeks were like walking on air for Maya. She and Zara were careful to maintain their professionalism during work hours, but in the evenings they would take long walks together, sharing meals and growing closer every day. Maya had never felt so happy or complete. Their relationship was tested when the reserve faced its biggest crisis yet. A severe drought had been building for months, and now it was threatening both the wildlife and the surrounding communities. Water sources were drying up, animals were dying, and tensions were rising between different groups competing for the remaining resources. Maya and Zara found themselves working 18-hour days, coordinating emergency water deliveries to remote areas and helping relocate animals to areas with better water access. The stress was enormous, and Maya watched Zara push herself to the point of exhaustion trying to help everyone. "You can't save everyone," Maya told her one night after Zara had spent hours on the phone trying to secure additional government aid. "You're going to make yourself sick." "These are my people," Zara replied, her voice thick with exhaustion. "My responsibility. I can't just let them suffer." Maya took Zara's hands in hers. "Our people, our responsibility. You don't have to carry this alone anymore." Those words seemed to break down the last wall between them. Zara allowed herself to lean on Maya for support, and together they developed strategies that neither could have managed alone. Maya used her scientific background to identify new water sources, while Zara used her community connections to coordinate distribution efforts. The crisis brought out the best in both women and showed them how strong they were as a team. When the rains finally came 3 months later, ending the drought, the entire community celebrated together. Maya and Zara stood side by side, watching children play in the puddles and animals returning to areas they had abandoned. "We did it," Zara said, taking Maya's hand. "We did," Maya agreed, squeezing her fingers. As word of their successful drought response spread, other conservation organizations began reaching out for advice. Maya found herself traveling to conferences and workshops, sharing what they had learned about community-based crisis management. But no matter where she went, she was always eager to return home to Zara and the reserve. One evening, as they sat watching elephants at the watering hole, Zara turned to Maya with a serious expression. "There's something you need to know about my role in the community. Next month is our annual cultural festival, and as the traditional leader, I'll need to present our year's accomplishments to all the community elders and members." Maya nodded. "That sounds important." "It is," Zara continued, "and I want you there with me. Not just as my colleague, but as my partner. Are you ready for that?" Maya's heart began beating faster. She understood what Zara was asking. This wouldn't just be about their personal relationship. It would be about her place in the community and their shared future. "Yes," Maya said without hesitation. "I'm ready." Part 4. Facing the Kingdom. The weeks leading up to the annual festival felt like the longest of Maya's life. Every morning she woke up with butterflies in her stomach, knowing that this event would change everything. Zara had explained that the HFY festival wasn't just a celebration. It was the most important gathering of the year, where community leaders shared their achievements and made announcements about the future. "Are you sure about this?" Maya asked Zara one evening as they practiced traditional greetings together. "What if people aren't ready to accept our relationship?" Zara took Maya's hands and looked into her eyes. "I've been thinking about this for months. You're not just my partner, you're part of this community now. The work you've done, the relationships you've built, the way you've learned our customs and language, you belong here. It's time everyone knew that." Maya appreciated Zara's confidence, but she couldn't shake her nervousness. She had been working with Zara's aunt, Mama Casey, to learn the proper protocols for the festival. Mama Casey was one of the most respected elders in the community, and her opinion carried enormous weight. "You must understand," Mama Casey explained. During one of their lessons, when Zara speaks at the festival, she speaks not just as a scientist or a project manager, but as our traditional leader. Her words carry the weight of generations. If she chooses to honor you publicly, it means she believes you are worthy of our trust and respect. The pressure was overwhelming. Maya had learned to speak the local language well enough for daily conversations, but she still struggled with formal expressions and cultural nuances. What if she made a mistake during the ceremony? What if she accidentally offended someone important? "Stop worrying so much," laughed Django, one of the young rangers who had become Maya's close friend. "Everyone already knows you're special too, Dr. Zara. Half the community has been waiting for this announcement for months." "Really?" Maya asked, surprised. "Of course. Django replied. "The way you two work together, the way you look at each other when you think no one is watching, it's been obvious to everyone. We're just happy that Dr. Zara found someone who makes her smile so much." As the festival approached, people began arriving from all corners of the region. Maya watched in amazement as the usually quiet reserve transformed into a bustling gathering place. Families set up temporary camps, traders arrived with goods to sell, and musicians began practicing for the evening performances. The festival itself was unlike anything Maya had ever experienced. The first day featured traditional dances, storytelling competitions, and displays of local crafts. Maya participated as much as she could, helping to prepare food and joining in the simpler dances. But mostly, she observed and tried to absorb everything. On the second day, the focus shifted to more serious matters. Community leaders presented reports on farming, education, healthcare, and other important issues. Maya listened carefully, impressed by the thoughtful discussions and the way different voices were heard and respected. But it was the third day that Maya had been dreading. This was when Zara would present the conservation report and make any major announcements about the future. Maya woke up that morning feeling sick to her stomach. "I can't do this," she told Zara over breakfast. "What if I say something wrong? What if I embarrass you in front of everyone?" Zara reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You won't embarrass me. You could never embarrass me. Just be yourself. That's who I fell in love with, and that's who this community has learned to love too." The presentation was scheduled for late afternoon, when the heat would be less intense, and everyone could gather comfortably under the large meeting tree. As the time approached, Maya felt like her heart might beat out of her chest. When Zara stood up to speak, the entire gathering fell silent. Maya watched from the side, amazed as always by Zara's natural leadership presence. Zara spoke about the successful water projects, the drought response, the new partnerships with other conservation organizations, and the steady growth of both wildlife populations and community prosperity. But none of these achievements would have been possible alone, Zara continued, her voice carrying clearly across the assembled crowd. Conservation is not the work of one person. It requires partnership, dedication, and people willing to commit their lives to protecting what we hold dear. Maya's pulse quickened as she realized Zara was building up to the moment they had discussed. 2 years ago, a young woman came to us from far away, wanting to learn about our work, Zara said. At first, she was just a visitor, a student trying to understand a world very different from her own. But she didn't remain a visitor for long. Zara gestured for Maya to join her in the center of the circle. Maya's legs felt like jelly as she walked forward, acutely aware of hundreds of eyes watching her every step. Maya has become more than a colleague or a friend, Zara continued, taking Maya's hand as she reached the center. She has become my partner in every sense of the word, in our work, in our vision for the future, and in my life. She is the person I choose to build our dreams with, the person who makes me stronger and wiser every day. The silence that followed felt eternal. Maya could hear her own heartbeat and the distant sound of wind in the trees. She held her breath, waiting for some sign of how the community would react. Then, slowly, one person began to clap, then another. Soon the entire gathering was applauding, and many people were smiling and nodding approvingly. Maya felt tears of relief and joy streaming down her face. But the reaction wasn't unanimous. Maya noticed some of the older men sitting with their arms crossed, their expressions stern and disapproving. A few families seemed to be having whispered conversations, and not all of them looked happy. After the formal ceremony ended, people approached Maya and Zara to offer congratulations. Most were warm and welcoming, expressing genuine happiness for the couple. But Maya also noticed some people who avoided eye contact or seemed to hurry past without stopping to speak. That evening, as the festival wound down with music and dancing, Maya found herself surrounded by young people asking questions about her work and her life. Children who had been too shy to speak to her before were now chattering excitedly about the animals she studied and the places she had traveled. "You're one of us now," declared Asha, a teenager who worked part-time at the reserve. "Dr. Zara chose you in front of everyone. That means you're family." The word family sent a warm feeling through Maya's chest, but she knew this was just the beginning. The festival had been a public declaration, but real acceptance would take time and continued effort. Some people would need to see more proof that she was worthy of their trust and respect. As she and Zara walked home that night, past families packing up their camps and preparing for the journey back to their villages, Maya felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. The biggest hurdle was behind them, but their real work was just beginning. Part 5. Her Mate, Their Future. The months following the festival brought both wonderful surprises and unexpected challenges for Maya and Zara. The overwhelming support they had received from most of the community was heartwarming, but Maya quickly learned that public acceptance didn't happen overnight for everyone. Some of the older community members remained skeptical. They weren't unkind, but Maya could sense their doubt whenever she participated in community meetings or cultural events. A few families stopped bringing their children to the educational programs Maya helped run. It hurt, but Zara reminded her that change takes time, especially in communities where tradition runs deep. "My grandfather was suspicious of modern medicine for years," Zara told Maya one evening as they reviewed the monthly reports. "Now he's one of our clinic's biggest supporters. People need time to see that change can honor tradition rather than destroy it." Maya threw herself into proving that her presence strengthened rather than weakened the community. She expanded the youth education programs, teaching local teenagers advanced conservation techniques that they could use to protect their ancestral lands. She worked with women's groups to develop sustainable fishing practices that increased protein sources for families while protecting fish populations. Her most successful project came when several community elders approached her about a problem with their traditional medicinal plants. Many important species were becoming harder to find due to climate change and habitat pressure. Maya suggested creating a medicinal plant garden using traditional knowledge combined with modern cultivation techniques. The project became a bridge between generations. Elder healers worked alongside young people, sharing ancient wisdom about which plants grew best in different conditions and how to harvest them sustainably. Maya contributed her scientific knowledge about soil composition and water management. The result was a thriving garden that preserved both cultural knowledge and important species. "This is exactly what we hoped for," Mama Casey told Maya during the garden's opening ceremony. "You haven't come here to change us. You've helped us become stronger versions of ourselves." Maya's relationship with Zara also deepened during this time. They had moved in together, sharing a small house on the edge of the main camp. Their daily routines blended seamlessly. Maya would wake early to check water quality readings, while Zara reviewed ranger reports. Then they would meet for breakfast and plan their day together. Their partnership extended beyond their personal life into their professional work. International conservation organizations began inviting them to speak at conferences about their community-based model. Maya discovered she enjoyed public speaking more than she had expected, especially when she could share stories about the amazing people she worked with every day. During one particularly memorable conference in South Africa, Maya found herself on a panel with conservation leaders from across the continent. When an audience member asked about the challenges of being an outsider working in a traditional community, Maya's answer surprised even herself. "I don't think of myself as an outsider anymore," she said. "Yes, I was born in a different country and grew up in a different culture. But home isn't about where you were born, it's about where you choose to build your life and where people accept you as family. This community has become my home in every way that matters." The video of her response went viral on social media, bringing positive attention to the reserve and its community-based approach. More importantly for Maya, it crystallized her own understanding of her identity and belonging. Not everything was smooth sailing. Maya and Zara faced practical challenges that many couples never have to consider. Maya's visa status required constant attention and paperwork. Her family in California struggled to understand her choice to live so far away, especially her mother, who worried constantly about her safety and future. "When are you coming home for a real visit?" her mother asked during one of their weekly video calls. "And when are you going to settle down and start a family?" Maya looked across the room at Zara, who was reading reports by lamplight, and smiled. "Mom, I am settled down, and I do have a family, just not the kind you expected." The conversation that followed was difficult but necessary. Maya's parents had been supportive from a distance, but they needed time to truly understand and accept the life their daughter had chosen. It would be months before they felt ready to visit Kenya. But when they finally did, Maya knew they would see what she had found here. The reserve itself continued to thrive. Wildlife populations were stable and growing. Community health and education indicators were improving steadily. The economic benefits of conservation tourism were reaching more families each year. Maya and Zara's water management programs had become a model copied by other reserves across East Africa. 3 years after, the festival where Zara had first called Maya her partner, another significant moment arrived. The reserve was hosting an international conference on community conservation, with delegates from over 20 countries. Maya was scheduled to give the opening presentation about integrated water management systems. As she stood before the audience of scientists, government officials, and community leaders, Maya felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought her to this moment. She looked out at faces representing different cultures, languages, and approaches to conservation, but all united by a shared commitment to protecting the natural world. 3 years ago, I came to this place as a student, thinking I had something to teach, Maya began. What I discovered instead was how much I had to learn. Real conservation doesn't happen in laboratories or lecture halls. It happens when communities decide to protect their heritage and when people from different backgrounds choose to work together toward a shared future. After her presentation, Maya was surrounded by conference attendees asking questions and requesting information about implementing similar programs in their own regions. But the moment that meant the most came when Zara joined her at the front of the room. "I want to introduce you to Maya," Zara announced to the gathered delegates. "She is our Director of Water Resources, our partner in conservation, and my chosen mate. Together, we represent what's possible when communities welcome new perspectives while staying true to their values." The applause was immediate and sustained. Maya looked around the room and saw faces filled with respect and admiration, not just for their work, but for the partnership they had built together. That evening, as the conference wound down and delegates prepared to return to their home countries, Maya and Zara walked through the reserve together. They passed the medicinal plant garden where teenagers were learning from elders, the research station where local rangers worked alongside international scientists, and the school where children learned about both traditional ecological knowledge and modern conservation techniques. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you hadn't come here?" Zara asked, as they paused by the watering hole where elephants were gathering for their evening drink. Maya considered the question. She thought about the path she had been on before. Graduate school, probably a research position at a university, or maybe a job with a government agency. It would have been a good life, but it would have been someone else's life. "Sometimes," Maya admitted. "But I can't imagine being anywhere else now. This is where I belong, with you, with this community, doing this work." Zara took her hand and squeezed it gently. "I feel the same way. I used to think I had to choose between honoring my traditions and embracing change. You showed me that the best way to honor the past is to build a sustainable future." As they walked back toward their home, Maya reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this moment. She had started as an uncertain intern, afraid of making mistakes and desperate to prove herself. Now she was a respected leader in a community that had embraced her as family, working alongside the woman she loved to protect a landscape that had become sacred to her. The scared young woman who had stepped off that plane in Kenya was gone, replaced by someone confident in her purpose and secure in her belonging. Maya had found not just a career or a relationship, but a calling and a home. And tomorrow there would be new challenges to face, new projects to develop, and new ways to prove that love and conservation could flourish together.